You see, God creates the world. God creates the world, and the only thing that exists in the world is God himself. That's all that exists, by the way. And you know, the Vilna Gaon says that the highlight of all of davening is when we say that last line of the first paragraph of Elena, when we say the words, Ein Od. What does Ein Od mean? That there's nothing else, mean that there's no other God? Deeper than that nothing exists except God. Okay? But now listen carefully. We see God creates this world in this way where he's 100% present in this realm that we inhabit. This is called Olam Asiyah, by the way. If you want to know where, like in the mall, those maps, you are here. Where are we? We're in this place called Olam Asiyah. So, God is very concealed in Olam Asiyah. By the way, interestingly, do you know what Olam Asiyah, do you know what your address is? It means the world of action. Very important, because, a lot of people feel as though the whole point is sincerity and everything like that. But did you ever notice how action-oriented Judaism is? How practical the mitzvahs are? That's because this is the world of action. That's where we live. That's the address of this world. It's all about taking that light within you and pumping it out into the world and lighting up the entire world. That's the whole mechanism of this dimension that we live in. That's why it's called the world of action. That's where you live. That's where I live. But the idea is that God is very concealed here, but listen carefully, is 100% present. God is as present in this realm as he is in the highest reaches of heaven. Now I'm going to tell you something, part of what I want to do with these talks, with God's help, is to try to unknot certain knots that get into people's hearts, certain knots that get into people's thinking, and to try to just comb them out so that we can feel in a clear way, so that we can think in a clear way. Let me tell you one of the knots that's in people's minds and in people's hearts. You ready? They think, and I'm going to give you what I call bad math right now. This is bad math. This is incorrect what I'm about to tell you. People think because God is concealed, God is less present. That's a big knot. God is very concealed, and God is totally present. And there is no contradiction. I'm going to say it again. God is very concealed. In fact, we say if God were any more concealed than he is, you wouldn't be able to find him. God is as concealed as he possibly can be in this world, where if you look for him, you can still find him. And God is totally present. Again, the fish in water, right? God is absolutely everywhere. And once you know that, wherever you look, you're going to see God. If you know this secret, you're going to see God wherever you look. All right, but I didn't get to the point of the Pischei Sharim yet. You can see it from your own point of view, from the hiddenness of God. And you can go, yeah, maybe yes, maybe no, maybe yes, maybe no. I'll tell you another knot. I heard a Rav say this one time, it stayed with me. He said, so many people, and we got to avoid this trap. You ready? He said, so many people, their spirituality is like a Ferris wheel. We just go around and around in the same circle. Around and around in the same circle our whole life. Guys, if this Mishmar thing is going to do anything, we got to break that cycle. We got to break it. We can't keep on doing this our whole lives. We got to grow up. We got to get to the next level, whatever that next level is. And we got to keep on climbing. That's what it is. So a lot of people think the following, and this is heartbreaking. And I'm talking about religious, quote unquote, religious people right now. They say, I believe with all my heart that all of this might be true. With all my heart. You know, if you're in this deep, if you're in this deep and you're going to do it anyway, just give yourself over to it. Give yourself over to it. And we're going to talk about that, and that's where I'm going to get to. And now let's talk about what the Pischei Sharm says. I can go through my whole life just interacting with the concealed nature of God as opposed to the absolute presence of God. I can go through all of my life serving a checklist instead of doing the follow-through and actually relating to God himself. I can go through my whole life seeing the world from my point of view. Here's the point. Or, here's the game changer, guys. Or I can make the decision to see the world from God's point of view. I can decide to make my reality the ultimate reality. Because I don't know about you, but I don't want to live in fake reality. By the way, an amazing thing, I heard this from Rabbi Tatz. There is no word for religion in Torah. We don't believe in religion. We believe in reality. It's either true or it's not true. You know, my Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Green, said the following. He said, you know what? If God said, you know what the mitzvah is? Go to the bowling alley and bowl all day. Do you know what I do? I'd go to the bowling alley and I'd bowl. That's what I do. Because I want to actually live in the reality that God wants me to live in. I want to see the world from his point of view, and from God's point of view, Ein Od. There is nothing other than God. So, it says in the Torah, and this is, I'm telling you, this is like just one of the life-changing Rashis in the whole Torah, for me. It says Moshe would go into the Olam Moed, right? And he would be between the wings of the Kruvim, and God would speak to him between the wings of the Kruvim. Look at the Rashi there. Unbelievable Rashi. It says that Moshe would stand there and he would listen to God talking to himself. Do you know what that means? From God's point of view, this entire world is a conversation between God and God. All right, and now let's go really deep. Let's go really, really deep. And what I'm telling you right now is from the Pischei Sharm. If you want to know what the Pischei Sharm is, it's a book that's so deep. Anytime they see me picking it up, someone like someone from like the religious ministry of Israel should like run into the room and grab it out of my hand and like run out the door. They're like, "What are you doing with the Pischei Sharm? You shouldn't have the Pischei Sharm." So I'm telling you something now from the Pischei Sharm, okay? So whatever you did today, you did something right, okay? So look, this is the letter Aleph, and this letter Aleph contains within it the architecture and the narrative of the universe. The architecture and the narrative of the universe. I'm going to show you, okay? You have 3 letters here. You have the Yud, and the Vav. And of course, just as background, you know that adds up to 26, which is Keneged Yud Ke Vav Ke, the holiest name of God. Okay? But that's not what I want to talk about. Because all that exists is God. And you know that the letter Aleph is one because God is one. God is one great unity. And by the way, when we say God is one, God is unique. You know what unique means? That there is nothing parallel that you can point to in this universe that is like God. Because God is unique and there is no smaller version of God in this world. It's only God. And God is one and he's beyond. And God fills the entire world and exists dimensions beyond it simultaneously. So now let's get to the Pischei Sharm. You have the upper Yud. What's going on with the upper Yud? What's the upper Yud of the Aleph? The upper Yud is the beginning of God's desire to create the universe. Okay? In other words, this point, because this is a nice big Yud, I asked him to draw a nice big one here, but when they refer to the Yud in the actual Sefer, they refer to it as a nakuda, which means a point, which means it can represent the smallest element of anything. So this upper Yud, the Yud Elyon, it's called, represents the beginning of the desire for God to create the universe. This is even before any materiality exists at all. Okay. Do you know what the lower Yud stands for? The lower Yud stands for the finishing of the creation of the entire universe, including Olam Asiyah, where we live right now. So in other words, here you have the architecture of the entire universe, starting with the beginning of the thought to create the universe, all the way down to the existence of the finished universe. And now you have the Vav, and the Vav is absolutely unbelievable. What the Vav is telling us is that God didn't just create the universe and then abandon it. This Vav is a kesher. It's a connection telling you that after God willed the universe into creation, that God remained absolutely connected to the universe. Very important. You know, there's a whole realm of religions, they're called deists, who are like weirdly religious. When I say weirdly religious, very not Judaism. They say, yeah, there's a God and he created the world, and after he created it, he said, see you around, bye-bye, not Torah. And this Vav attests to the fact that God stayed connected to the universe. All right, that's step one. Step two, something unbelievable. What God did was, you see, Vav also means a hook. The word Vav means a hook. God is hooking himself into this world, and he's going to pull this world back into himself. This world is temporary, folks. You got a limited time opportunity to do whatever we have to do. And at a certain point, the geula, the redemption, comes. And that's the next level of what this Vav means. It means that because this world is also made out of godliness, God is going to return himself to himself because it's all godliness. Step number 3. This kav, this is called the kav. It's like a ray of light. It's divine energy that keeps on flowing into this world, keeping it created and recreated and recreated. It's a straight line. You know what else is a straight line? You and me. We're the kav. We're that straight line at another level. We're not God. We're not God. Only God is God. But by doing mitzvahs and by learning Torah and everything like that, what we do is we put the light into the world, which completes the world and completes the redemption. So this is the amazing thing. When you do mitzvahs, you become that element which is ultimately completing all of creation, attaching the highest point to the lowest point and bringing it all together. When you do tshuva, when you say, God, I long for you, I want to return to you, I want to serve you with all of my heart, you are bringing all the forces of godliness together. You are activating that divine mechanism. It's unbelievable. Okay, we haven't got a lot of time, so I want to start to wrap it up. I told you You get to choose the reality of the world that you want to live in. That's your choice. And you can make the radical step that I recommend to live in the ultimate reality, which means not just to see God from our point of view through the hiddenness of God in this world, but to actually choose to live in the ultimate reality, to see this world from God's point of view. And when you see this world from God's point of view, you know that everything is good, everything is light. So how do we get there? How do we get there? So I'm going to tell you a very practical step, and it's a kavanah that you can have when you say Shema. You see, because here's the turning point, and it's not a simple thing. It takes a lot of work, but I'm suggesting this as the next big growth step that we can all take together, and it's life-changing. And that's turning belief into knowledge. Turning belief into knowledge. And I'm going to tell you one of my all-time favorite stories. The Berditchever Rebbe, his father-in-law was a big Talmud Chacham, and this was during the early days of the Hasidic movement when the mainstream Jewish establishment didn't really know what the Hasidim were doing. They were a little bit, skeptical about it. And the Reb Levi Yitzchak, the Berditchever, went to study in Mezhebush for a period of time, and he came back and he said, his father-in-law said to him, not so respectfully, so what did you learn in Mezhebush all that time, right? And Levi Yitzchak, the Berditchever, says back to him, I learned that there's one God. And his father-in-law sort of scoffed. He says, everybody knows that. Mm-hmm. Our non-Jewish housemaid knows that. Mm-hmm. He calls her in and he says to her, how many gods are there? And she says, there's one God. He says, you see? And he says back to her, she says that there's one God. I know that there's one God. So I'm going to give you an exercise. You can do it twice a day. You can do it multiple times a day if you like. It's when we say the Shema. So I think everybody knows that the way the Shema is written, and it's in most Sidurim as well, but it's certainly in the Torah. The last letter of Shema is a large ayin, and the last letter of Echad is a large dalet. And that spells aid, which means to witness, right? But if you reverse these two letters, it spells da, which means to know. So I think contained in this is a secret to getting to know that there's one God. Not just to say that there's one God. Not to say, I absolutely believe with all my heart. It might be true. We want to get to that place where we know. So how are we going to know, Chevra? And I think the secret is by witnessing. By witnessing, we're going to come to know. And what does it mean to witness? And I'll just end with this. To witness means that you understand that your whole life is an ongoing conversation with God, because all that exists is God. That whatever happens to you, that you see this as God talking to you. And you have to understand the goodness of God. Otherwise, you're going to become so neurotic, it's no good. You have to believe in the goodness of God. And that whatever happens is for your good and everything like that. And that everything that happens during the day, during your life, that this is an ongoing conversation between God and you, between you and God. And to talk to God directly. Not to have a whole relationship with a checklist. After you drink some coffee, after you drink a good meal, after you have a good time, whatever it is, say, God, that was so nice. I can't believe that person just said a nice thing to me. I know that was from you. Thank you for giving me chizuk. I know that was from you, God. Thank you. Thank you for encouraging me. That was so delicious. It was so good. Thank you, God. In addition to the bracha. And then you're going to form that relationship. And then it's going to become so much like iron in your life, that it's your reality at that point. It's not a question of emunah. It's not a question of emunah. It's going to be so obvious, so beautifully obvious. Okay. Good Shabbos, good Shabbos.